Kia ora, Aotearoa. Welcome, whānau, to the War on News, your weekly sacred cast law and assault on current affairs. Beam live from the Palatial Stratus News Bunker, very deep beneath the heart of the Greyland Republic. If this show was the Israeli embassy, then shouldn't it be explaining to New Zealand what their spies were doing in Christchurch during the earthquake and whether or not they hacked into the police computer while they were there? I'm just saying, this is New Zealand, not the Gaza Strip, and you can't be pulling that shit here, Israel. In tonight's political media crimes against reason kill zone, I don't believe most of the news on TVNZ, so why would I believe their political polls? Act squabble about how racist they should be, the Speaker of the House's shameful double standards over Hone's oath, plus this week's Sex in a Super City and the Wanko the Week award. Leading the War on News this week, brothers and sisters, as needlessly overproduced as the opening titles to TVNZ7's Talk Talk, the Shakespearean Greek tragedy that is the Murdoch meltdown went through more twists and turns this week than New Zealand on-air public broadcasting funding applications. Corrupt police bosses resigning, editors arrested, whistleblowers committing suicide, cream pies in the face. All that is missing now is for Rupert Murdoch to put a gun to his head and be driven around Greater London by Rebecca Brooke in an O.J. Simpson-style police chase while doing a live interview with Piers Morgan via cell phone. It couldn't have happened to a nicer media mogul. Remember, when we kill him, whānau, we need to bury his head and body in separate graves so he can't come back from the dead to feed. Brothers and sisters, so the man the National Party will run against John Banks in Epsom is John Banks' biographer, Paul Goldsmith. How incestuous. Paul doesn't just worship the ground John Banks walks on, he also worships Banks's hatred of the poor. When he was an Auckland City Councillor in 2008, Paul tried to expand police powers so the people his mentor John Banks once infamously described as gypsies could be arrested on Queen Street for being homeless. Having the biographer of John Banks compete in the same electorate is the ethical equivalence of sleeping with your sister. It's politically slutty. Brothers and sisters, the pro-smacking Christian lobby group Family Fist are still banging on about the right to bash their kids for little baby Jesus by putting out a doco, and I'm stretching the word doco to encompass cult recruitment video, called My Mummy's a Criminal, in the hope to turn the tide and legalise child bashing once again. You would think after the humiliation of having so many of their groundless fears about innocent parents being arrested for gently smacking their child out of the way of a rampaging bear not being realised since the legislation was passed, that they would be as quiet as a preacher predicting the rapture wrong and be bitching about something with actual purpose, like the shocking amount of sex in early evening TV time slots. But no, it's about their bloody right to bash Satan out of their kids. Ugh. After listening to these very same type of religious bullshit artists 25 years ago predicting the end of Western civilization as we know it if the homosexual law reform bill passed, I think they are as irrelevant to social policy now as they were a quarter of a century ago. It's real simple. Don't hit your kids. Ever. Discipline them till the moon comes home. Sweet Jesus, they need discipline. But don't hit them. They're just kids. Whānau, I have plenty of time for God. I just can't stand his sanctimonious, hateful followers. To the headlines, whānau. TVNZ political poll this week says Labour have fallen by 7%. Everyone loves John Key. USA, USA, USA. Brothers and sisters, I don't believe what TVNZ has to say on most topics on any given day. So why in Christ's name would I believe their latest cheap brain fart telephone poll pretending that John Key has almost 10,000% support? Why would I put any faith in a news station that was at one point giving on-the-hour updates on happy fucking feet? The mainstream media are so biased towards the National Party that John Key could drunkenly urinate on a Jetstar flight and the New Zealand Herald would run an editorial the next day claiming it's a Labour Party smear campaign to deflect attention from Phil Goff's latest leadership rumours. These cheap brain fart telephone polls are using a deeply flawed methodology, which in a recession as steep as this are not measuring the opinions of poor in any way, shape or form, and as such are giving biased results not worth the breathless attention the mainstream media heap upon them. Remember the Len Brown and John Banks Auckland mayoralty race last year? Nick and Nick is what the New Zealand Herald Digipoll screamed, and what happened in that race? It was a goddamned landslide to Len Brown. What about the Te Tokoro by-election? Remember the very same flawed telephone polls declaring that Hone was only ahead by 1% that the mainstream media parroted? How much did Hone end up winning by? Over 9%. TVNZ's own political reporter Guy Espiner called Te Tokoro for Kelvin, and Kelvin ended up losing by over 9%. Why believe a word of what he has to say now? These polls are deeply flawed, not simply because they rely on telephone landlines in a cell phone world, but because they never include the don't knows of the swing voters, and they use weighting that is never disclosed. All of which adds up to a system as good as predicting raptures as it is predicting elections. Take Auckland as an example. 35% of households in Mangere and other South Auckland electorates have landlines. 50% in Mount Albert and other Isthmus electorates have landlines. Close to 80% in most North Shore electorates have landlines. A decade ago, those differences were less than 10%, and all electorates had the majority of people on listed landlines. Now they don't, and you can easily see by that breakdown in Auckland alone how biased these cheap brain fart telephone polls can be. We are to believe from this TVNZ poll that the Māori Party, after getting crucified in Te Tokoro, have suddenly managed to almost double their party votes in the last month? Really? Only Dr. Peter Sharples on a large amount of acid would believe that. The mainstream media are using these cheap telephone polls not to reflect public opinion, but to manipulate it. This election will be much closer than they are pretending. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. ACT squabble about how racist they should be. In the wake of their creative director quitting because ACT were a pack of white cowards for not wanting to do the full Monty of bigotry in their race-baiting advert last weekend, ACT have gone from claiming it's the biggest threat to New Zealand to it being nothing this week, as ACT said nothing at all about race. Which is a bit weird, isn't it? I mean, last week it was Bribe a Tribe and Maori Radicals. This week it's Don Nicholson. Sure, moving to a climate denier from a race hater is a step in the right direction, back to sanity, but it's not much of a step, is it? Can we all imagine how the meeting between Brash, Perigo and Ansell went when they were deciding on their appalling advert that attracted 403 complaints to the ASA? I want to be racist. No, that's not racist enough. I could be more racist than that. That's way too racist. You're not a real racist at all. You're a pretend racist. I am not. I'm just as a racist as you, but that's just too racist. People might think we're racist. This isn't nearly racist enough for me. I'm leaving. I think that may be a verbatim quote. ACT say Maorification of New Zealand is a terrible thing, but seeing as Māori have been here 1,000 years, survived 171 years of colonialism, managed to bounce back from near cultural annihilation, wouldn't we all want a bit of Maorification as New Zealanders? They could be to New Zealand what adamantium is to Wolverine. Maorification sounds as protective as pink bats. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. Hone Harawira was denied from being sworn in because he wanted to swear his oath on the Treaty for the People of Poverty. Please explain the double standard here. Other politicians have been allowed to add or subtract from the oath in the exact same manner as Hone did, as long as they end with the correct affirmation, which was exactly what Hone was doing. Why is it okay for others, but not okay for Hone? The double standards on display by Lockwood Smith to deny Hone being sworn in based on a petty technicality that has been granted to every other politician being sworn in is just another embarrassing historical footnote in the land of the wrong uptight crowd. Whānau, are you feeling sexy? It's Sex in the Super City time. So, in my latest instalment of how shit the Rugby World Cup is, we've covered off the massive cost. We've covered off the vandalism to the central city being agreed to in order to tart the city up. We've covered off the disgusting expansion of secret intelligence service powers given because of the Rugby World Cup. We've covered off the homeless hit squads by private companies. And now, it's the fear of a large spike in rapes and sexual assaults that will occur because of the Rugby World Cup. Apparently, women's refuge and rape crisis are expecting to be swamped as the vast influx of drunk rugby fans poke, prod and invade people they don't have consent to poke, prod or invade. The government were able to rush extra powers through Parliament to protect corporate branding rights for the Rugby World Cup, but couldn't rush through extra money for Women's Refuge to pay for the social cost of their drunken piss-up at Party Central. Gosh! I can't wait for this bullshit to be over. Whānau, let's wrap the show with this week's Wanko of the Week award. This week's Wanko of the Week, brothers and sisters, has to go to Close Up's apology over copying a segment from the US news media. ABC started this series of Made in America back in January, and they are still updating the story month by month. They had a piece on it this week. Being the avid international TV jaded news junkie that I am, I immediately wondered how long would that take to wash up on the ill-researched, stupid shores of our mainstream media, and so didn't even blink when it appeared on Close Up. How funny is that? I think so little of the mainstream media, I merely pulled that face you get when you pass a nasty fart and went about my day. So from that position of cynical Gen X hostility towards mainstream current affairs, I ask, why on earth is Mark Sainsbury, the walrus of news, apologising for this when Close Up have so many other things to apologise for? What about that time they bumped John Key on the very day he was going to justify why he had U-turned on raising GST when he had clearly promised before the election that he would not? Close Up bumped John Key from having to explain himself for a bloody All Black who wanted to confess that he groped a teenager on a Fijian beach. When a Close Up going to apologise for that clusterfuck? What about them spending more time last year on the life and death of a psychic octopus than any real scrutiny of government policy? What about the live cross to the shed that Shrek the sheep was butchered in instead of focusing on any number of immense stories, from the largest erosion of legal civil liberties ever undertaken in this country to the largest expansion of police and state powers this country has ever witnessed? What about the long, slow embraces and gentle snuggling that passes as interviews with government ministers? What about the endless updates about that bloody penguin? This crap story you've ripped off the American networks is what you choose to apologise for, Close Up? It's like Paul Henry saying sorry for his shit-eating grin. And why the bloody hell did Close Up have to plagiarise something as shitty, crappy and safe as bloody ABC News? Why can't they plagiarise something decent like Al Jazeera? Sweet Jesus, how about just a basic BBC? Anything would be better than this current embarrassment. How the hell can we, in one of the worst economic moments since the Great Depression, with very few chances of the global economy getting better within a decade, how can we have such defunct current affairs from our former public broadcaster? The lightweight advertorial infotainment bullshit they serve up as current affairs deserves all the contempt we can muster. TVNZ is now that old family Labrador that's a bit bung, blind in one eye and messes on the carpet by accident that no one wants anymore and is looking to be put down. The debate about the importance of public broadcasting has been so bastardised and damaged that the public will not rally when TVNZ goes on the privatisation block, which is dangerous as it's most likely Rupert Murdoch who will have the cash to buy TVNZ. Democracy needs an active media that challenges the powerful for that democracy to be healthy. While the corporate media paid off by the $43 million loan to MediaWorks, the public broadcaster is all that's left to challenge the government, but to date, TVNZ has been asleep at the wheel. When the media no longer serve the citizens and treat them merely as consumers for ratings fodder, that media lose the respect of those citizens, and during a recession this steep, no one can afford to be a consumer any longer. TVNZ needs to remember what they are to the wider role of the Fourth Estate in a democracy if they want to have any credibility for the future. That's it for tonight, folks. Don't forget Citizen A plays Friday, 8 p.m, Freeview 21 and Sky 89. Follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Facebook site. It has all the shows posted up online and allows you to befriend other like-minded citizens for romantic news moments. Good night, New Zealand. You stay classy, Aotearoa. Righto.